Okay, so picture this. Worcester, South Africa. You've got these majestic mountains, vineyards all around. It looks incredible.
Just beautiful, yeah.
But, you scratch beneath that surface and there's a community really grappling with some tough stuff.
Hmm.
We're talking unemployment hovering around 30%, over half the population living on, what, less than R9.45 a month?
It's a stark reality.
Yeah,
Poverty, crime, corruption, substance abuse issues, too.
yeah, it's a lot. So the big question we're kind of digging into today is how does a community facing all that,
Hmm?
how does it move towards something like order, beauty, and, real abundance?
That's the core question, isn't it? And it feels huge, almost overwhelming sometimes when you look at challenges that deep.
Right.
But actually, history can give us some really interesting blueprints, models even.
Totally. And that's what really caught our eye. We started looking at Geneva back in the 16th century under John Calvin.
Right.
And in just 25 years, like a quarter of a century, the city went from being pretty poor and struggling to having this vibrant economy.
It's an amazing turnaround. And it wasn't just theory, it actually happened.
Exactly. It's a proven case study.
And Calvin's influence, it wasn't just spiritual in a narrow sense. It had real, tangible effects on the social fabric, the economy.
Yeah.
It really shows what's possible with intentional kind of multi-pronged change.
So that's our mission for this deep dive, really, to get under the hood of what happened in Geneva. What were the key drivers? And we're especially interested in this idea of a Hesed home.
Mm-hmm. Hesed, that Hebrew word.
Yeah, this idea of a community that really embodies God's unfailing, affectionate, merciful, loving kindness, and how that can actually foster, productivity and flourishing for everyone.
Leading to that communal productivity.
Exactly. So we've been looking at an exec mill thesis in a YouTube video, Reforming Worcester, South Africa.
Okay, so let's start with the problem itself. The thesis says it's not just about jobs in Worcester. What's the deeper layer there? Yeah, that's a really critical distinction the thesis makes. I mean, unemployment is obviously a huge symptom, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned the stats, broader measures, pushing 45.5% nationally at one point, 29% in the Western Cape, and youth unemployment. Goodness, 46% for 34-year-olds. It's alarming.
Just staggering numbers.
But the thesis argues the fundamental issue runs deeper. It's a deficit in the ability or maybe even the willingness sometimes to live what it calls a truly productive life.
Okay, and productive life isn't just punching a clock 9 to 5.
No, not at all. It's holistic. It's talking about spiritual, mental, social, emotional, and physical well-being, all of it together. The thesis even brings up something called a Christian Magna Carta, basically saying everyone has a right not just to basic stuff, food and shelter, but to this kind of fulfilling, productive existence.
That really reframes it, doesn't it? It's about enabling people to actually thrive on all these different levels. Now, the thesis also touches on something interesting. This observation that sometimes foreigners seem to find work when locals are struggling. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, it's complex, and the thesis points to a few potential factors. There can be perceptions, right or wrong, that maybe foreign workers are more willing to do certain jobs, or perhaps they possess specific skills that are, hard to find locally right now.
Like specific trades?
Yeah, the thesis mentions examples like qualified builders, carpenters, electricians, even things like math teachers. So it suggests that just, creating generic jobs isn't the whole picture. You've also got to look at skills gaps, maybe attitudes towards different types of work. It's layered.
Got it. So it's much more than just the unemployment number. It's about readiness, skills, perspective, the whole package for a fulfilling life. Okay, let's pivot to Geneva then. The thesis pulls out 7 key factors from that transformation. What's factor number 1?
Okay, the first one identified is knowing and understanding the applied gospel. And the emphasis here is really on applied. It's not just about, a salvation experience, but about actively living out Jesus's teachings in every single part of your life.
So, practical application.
Very practical. The thesis actually voices a bit of concern that maybe some churches today focus more on, say, worship songs than really deep teaching on obeying Jesus's commands, like in Matthew 28:20.
That really makes you think about faith and action day to day, not just a Sunday thing. Okay, what's the second key?
Second is education for all. And this was pretty radical back then. Calvin believed everyone, male, female, rich, poor, should get a quality education. Primarily, his motive was so they could read the Bible for themselves.
Wow, that is radical for the 16th century.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And think about the long-term impact of that on how people saw the world, how they behaved, literacy, critical thinking.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah, empowering people through knowledge. Okay, number 3.
Third factor is this idea that work is worship. It draws on the Hebrew concept of avoda.
Avoda. Okay.
Yeah. And basically, it dissolves any artificial split between sacred and secular. All work, whatever you do, is seen as service to God.
Okay. No hierarchy of jobs in God's eyes sort of thing.
Exactly. And interestingly, the research mentioned in the thesis found that in Worcester, about half the people interviewed still kind of held a more divided, dualistic view of work and faith.
Hmm.
So the vision for a reformed Worcester includes seeing work as purposeful, fulfilling, which then has knock-on effects, right? Like better productivity, maybe less crime because people feel engaged.
I can definitely see how shifting that core view of your daily work could be massively motivating. Powerful. What's number 4?
Number 4 is discipline, law, and order through accountability. The idea here is that godly laws aren't just arbitrary rules, they flow from values. And when people embrace those values, empowered by the Holy Spirit, it transforms lives and naturally leads to a safer, more orderly society.
So it's internal transformation leading to external order.
Right. The thesis suggests there's maybe a perception in Worcester of a lack of consequences for breaking laws, but also, perhaps more deeply, a lack of that inner motivation rooted in shared biblical values.
Okay, cultivating that inner compass, not just relying on external enforcement.
Right.
Got it. Number 5.
Fifth is caring for the poor, but doing it with discipleship. So this taps into the biblical calls for generosity, that word Hesed again, and also for restoring justice, which is mishpat.
Hesed and mishpat, loving kindness and justice.
Exactly. But the crucial part here is the balance. Yes, meet immediate basic needs, but also equip people for long-term responsibility and independence. Move beyond just, handouts.
Right, the teach a person to fish idea, but maybe with a deeper holistic discipleship element.
Precisely. And the thesis is quite frank that maybe current poverty efforts in Worcester aren't quite hitting that mark effectively yet.
That's a really important distinction, help versus empowerment. Okay, factor 6.
Sixth is loving the stranger. The Greek word used is philoxenos.
Philoxia.
Yeah, and it means more than just tolerating difference. It's about a genuine love, approval, a welcoming of people who are foreign, strange, or new. It's the direct opposite of xenophobia.
Which feels incredibly relevant for South Africa, given its history.
Hugely relevant. That need for unity and diversity. And history shows Geneva actually had a strong track record of welcoming refugees during Calvin's time and after.
Wow. Embracing difference as a strength. That's powerful. Okay, and the final key, number 7.
The seventh factor is partnerships between different spheres of society. Basically, recognizing the incredible power, the synergy that happens when business, the church, education, healthcare, government, all these different sectors actually collaborate and work together towards a common goal.
Makes sense. You achieve more together than any one sector could alone. Okay, so those are the 7 factors derived from Geneva's transformation. How does the thesis propose applying this model to Worcester? This is where the Hesed circle idea comes in, right?
Exactly. The thesis paints this vision of a reformed Worcester as a Hesed home. Think of it like a building. The foundation is the applied gospel we talked about.
Okay.
The ground floor, the main living area, is avoda work, as worship, meaningful contribution. The walls holding it up are Hesed, that loving kindness and mishpat justice. And the roof protecting everything is education for all.
That's a great visual metaphor, the Hesed home.
Yeah. And within that vision, the Hesed circle is proposed as the catalyst, the engine for building this home.
And this circle is made up of tzaddikim. Tell us about that term.
Tzaddikim is Hebrew for righteous men and women of God, people committed to living out these values. The idea is inspired in part by the Clapham sect in England.
Ah, right. Wilberforce and that group, known for their social reform work.
Exactly, a group of influential Christians who really drove significant change. So the Hesed Circle in Worcester would be a similar kind of group, individuals from different spheres, business, church, education, community work, whatever, who commit to meeting regularly.
To do what?
To share life, build relationships, but crucially, to seek God-inspired strategies together, to influence their own networks and spheres towards making this Hesed home vision a reality in Worcester.
So it's not about pulling people out of their jobs or current roles.
No, quite the opposite. The goal isn't to form some new separate organization that does everything. It's about empowering existing leaders and influencers within their current roles.
Okay, that's key.
The initial idea proposed is maybe a monthly training program, perhaps for about a dozen people to start. They dive deeper into these 7 factors, get equipped, and then think about how to apply them.
And then maybe form smaller groups.
Potentially, yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
form a core team or smaller impact groups focused on specific needs that emerge, like, say, vocational training or tackling homelessness. But the core principle is they operate within their existing spheres, their business, their church, their school, bringing these Hesed home principles to bear right where they are.
That sounds like a really organic, grassroots approach to transformation, leveraging what's already there. And the long-term vision here is pretty ambitious.
It is. The hope laid out is to see a culture of genuine communal productivity flourishing in Worcester by 2048.
Wow, 2048, that mirrors the 25 years it took in Geneva.
Exactly. It's a generational vision. But it hinges on a deep, sustained commitment to these principles we've discussed. The applied gospel, education, purposeful work, responsibility, justice, compassion, welcoming others, and strong partnerships.
So for you listening right now, maybe Worcester feels far away, maybe not. But these concepts we've been talking about, Sadiqim, righteous individuals acting together, Shema, which means really listening to God and obeying, Hesed, that active loving kindness, Mishpat, pursuing justice, Avoda, work as worship, even oikodome, this Greek idea of building up the community, which fits the Hesed home perfectly, and philoxenos, loving the stranger. These are powerful ideas anywhere. What stands out to you as you hear this?
I think what's really compelling and hopeful is this reminder that we can learn from history, from models like Geneva, and that significant positive change in a community. It isn't just some, vague wish. It's actually possible, maybe even within a generation, if there's intentional, committed action based on sound principles.
Yeah.
And specifically for those listening in or near Worcester, this vision of a Hesed home, it's not just an academic concept from a thesis, it's really meant as an invitation.
Mm-hmm.
An invitation to connect with others who share that longing for a transformed community and to explore how you might become part of this Hesed Circle effort.
That's a great point. So maybe the final thought for you to take away is this.
Yeah.
Real, lasting societal change often starts small. It starts with a dedicated group of people applying core truths with intention, right where they are, in their existing spheres of influence. So the question becomes, what's your sphere? And how could you perhaps contribute to building a bit more of a Hesed home right there in your own context? And for anyone whose interest is really piqued by this, especially if you're connected to Worcester and want to know more about the practical steps, about maybe joining or supporting the Hesed Circle, definitely check out the resources we'll link to. There's info on getting the full thesis and connecting with the people driving this forward in Worcester.